Okay, hey everyone, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. A really cool review for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them: they are founded back in 1881. They are Japanese in origin and have factories throughout Asia. They cover all market segments from entry level to high end, and this is a dive watch. Some key characteristics in design language: when you're looking for a diver, of course you want to find water resistance. Typically do some type of screw down crown. You want to find something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if on bracelet. This is their new Seiko Prospex Marinemaster SLA079, and it is a modern reinterpretation of Seiko's original saturation diver from 1968 that would later go on to inspire the JDM Marinemasters, the JDM Marinemaster 300 specifically, that whole diver line and different variations, throughout the years, to include some, even some newer SPB level watches. This is actually the second release of Seiko's new International Marinemaster Premium Prospex model, which is great because I think everybody kind of wanted to see the return of this particular design language with that iconic name. Now, this goes for $2,900 MSRP, and I sourced this through Belmont Watches in San Diego. They were amazing as usual, as you guys know if you're fans of the channel. So if you are looking for anything, whether it be this watch or others, whether they be new, pre-owned, whatever, or maybe you just need them to kind of hunt for something for you guys, I definitely highly recommend Belmont Watches in San Diego. Now, this one is, I don't know, I guess it shouldn't be controversial because I think it's pretty much what everybody has been asking for. But what I think might be controversial that I will tell you is that this is cheaper than the previous Marinemaster 300 that they still sell, which is the Marinemaster 300 SLA021, which sells for $3,100, and this goes for $29. This is a Marinemaster 300, although it is no longer rated for saturation diving. It is ISO rated for scuba diving up to 300 meters. So that might, not be quite up to the lore as some folks would like, but it does have that, it still does have that 8L movement. So you're going to be getting a nice 4 hertz sweep. Not quite the high beat of the original inspiration, with the 5 hertz, but most of the people that enjoy this design language fell in love with the newer watches that came out in the 2000s in terms of the JDM Marinemaster line. So with that said, let's go ahead and zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, guys, another huge shout out to Belmont Watches in San Diego. Highly recommend these guys. It's actually where I sourced my original Marinemaster 200 from. This is an updated variation that I actually swapped it out for. So I originally started out with the black dial SJE101. Now I have the SJE119 to pair, I think, beautifully with the new SLA079. Now, both of these are fantastic and very premium watches, and I think they are actually marketed at different folks. I think this is a great watch for people that enjoy the Seiko brand, but maybe from afar, and maybe nothing really spoke to them. This is definitely more for the Seiko purist in terms of the design aesthetic. I mean, you got the split marker at 12, you have a 4 o'clock crown, I mean, you have the bevels and everything that's very much like the Marinemaster of the 2000s that so many folks fell in love with, but unfortunately those watches were quite unwearable for a lot of people, whereas this newer iteration definitely wears, I mean, pretty much like an SKX 007 or 009. So with as iconic as those watches are, this could easily, I mean, apart from the price point, could easily be the new de facto Seiko to wear. But with that, of course, the design language of the 62 MAS has been very, very strong, and something like this being an evolution of that, and really answering the call of, hey, let's get it smaller, thinner, let's expand into display case backs and everything like that, and even having a really cool textured plank dial, right? Just little different niceties that kind of, but you're still getting getting nice bevels and everything like that. So it's definitely thoroughly modern, but you know, just again, a bit of a different blueprint versus what we have here. But at the end of the day, I think, you know, well, number one, this is what we're here to talk about, is this new release. There'll be other videos that I will do plan to shoot in terms of future comparisons and whatnot that really get into side by sides. But let's talk about this particular watch. It has a 42.6 millimeter diameter, so that's across, and across the bezel, it's only 41.5 millimeters. So those of you that are thinking again in terms of size that might be a little intimidated or have been intimidated by the larger Marinemasters of the past, guys, this one just hits such a sweet spot. Now, in terms of the thickness, only 13.4 millimeters thick there, guys. And again, that is with that 8L movement. So very, very nice. And you can see, of course, all of the tricks that Seiko is so, let me give it a quick little wipe here, that they're so famous for in terms of the beveling, the undercuts, right? All of that work that they do to just make this beautifully ergonomic, as well as just wears visually much lighter, right? The visual weight is cut down to a really, really beautiful level. So very, very cool. All those tricks exist there, but now on a smaller platform. So for those of you that are hoping that they were to shrink this down a little bit more, guys, I'm telling you, if you shrunk this down anymore, it just, certain things would be off, proportions would be off. So I think this is the best balance of proportions and scale that I've ever seen for this particular model. And guys, I've seen, you know, certain inspirations and iterations and recreations of this silhouette, you know, with 200 meters that have been, you know, a little smaller and this and that, a little tighter. I still think, yeah, I think they dialed it in best at this. Of course, the original 6159, I mean, gorgeous, timeless. I wouldn't change anything about it. It actually was relatively thin considering for what it was. But it's that and then this. So if I could still get the original and you know, I would love that, right? The vintage from 1968. But since I can't get one of those brand new, at least for not the same price, this has got to be it. So in terms of this design aesthetic. Now, you do get 120 click rotating bezel. Definitely feels like another, you know, SLA type of bezel action, a lot more dampened, still quite clicky, but still relatively dampened, but very smooth, which is nice. And you can see there, oh, went over a little bit too far. Not really having any alignment issues with this one. There's just a, there we go, right on the click. I'm sure if I was to cock it back, you know, and it would be maybe slightly off, but that's only if I'm unnaturally going to do that. Let me give it another quick wipe here, guys, because this thing is quite reflective with all of these glossy finishes, but thankfully they look fantastic, and I just want to keep them looking quite immaculate for you guys for the video, because this definitely is going to go into a pretty heavy rotation for me. Now, getting into some more details, that 8L movement, the 8L35, has a 50-hour power reserve, beats at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour in terms of that beat rate. So nice, smooth sweep there. And then getting into the dial, guys, you're getting raised indices, you're getting a sloped chaptering where everything aligns really well as well. Texture dial, that grainy texture looks great, and I think is a nice contrast against the very sleek, you know, glossy texture of that bezel insert, which is a lacquered steel insert. It's not a ceramic, although it does have the look of ceramic. Until Seiko posts something saying that this is ceramic, I will go ahead and report this as a lacquered steel, as many of these types of inserts have been in the past. Now, the handset is brushed and polished now, while not quite as decadent as the older Marinemaster models. Also, they're sized better. They're the right length. They're not overly short, and everything isn't, you know, there's a lot of proportion issues with the original. Although it's very iconic, I shouldn't say original, but just the iconic one that most people think of when they think Marinemaster 300. Because it definitely wasn't the first Marinemaster watch. It was just the one that kind of caught the zeitgeist of watch enthusiasts. Now, you are going to see it now says Divers 300 meters versus professional. So it's not a saturation diver, but it is still ISO rated for scuba diving up to 300 meters, which is great. But, you know, some of you, that might be a little turn off in terms of, you know, you lost the professional text. And, you know, if you bought this specifically to go saturation diving and use it in a diving bell, then, you know, unfortunately, that's going to be a loss for you. Now, one thing about the dial that some people, I'm sure in the comments will try to complain about is going to be the Prospex X. Guys, Seiko Prospex, it's one of the most searched brand names at Seiko in terms of their sub-brands. People search Seiko Prospex. People know what Seiko Prospex means. And the X symbol is a P and an S turned into an X. And the letter X is the most symmetrical like letter it's not an F, right? It's not a J. It's not a, you know, it's just like, of all the letters to complain about, you know, saying that it throws off the dial, like the letter X, it's like the coolest letter. X-Men. Come on, guys. Like, so yeah. The letter X, if you want to complain about the letter X being on the dial, I mean, that's just, for me, that's people regurgitating pet peeves that are, you know, unfortunately, when it comes to YouTube, a lot of times pet peeves can become quite contagious, and people, oh, well, once you say something, you can't, oh, I can't unsee that now. No, I don't like the X. Guys, it's the letter X. Really, we're complaining about the letter X. So again, it's like the coolest letter in the alphabet. So that's enough of that little rant. And one thing you're noticing too is, hey, check that out. There's a feature where this becomes a no-date model, and it happens every hour. It's when that minute hand covers up the date. So for those of you that aren't happy about the date, there you go. There's a workaround for you. So Seiko has you covered, much like the minute hand has the window covered there. But in all seriousness, guys, I think they, you know, again, it's a trade-off, right? You want to keep in with ISO compliance. You want to make sure that this reads as a tool watch. As much as people complain about brands like Rolex and Omega losing their way, you know, from, you know, robust tool watches, it's refreshing to see brands that still do make an effort to be, you know, quite compliant and not making up new regulations, but outdoing the existing standards. So yeah, I mean, knowing the history of Seiko, even though this is rated at 300 meters, I mean, yes, ISO standards are going to go like 15% above that, but, knowing Seiko, you could probably take this 600 meters and it would be fine. But you know what? A recreational dive is going to be no more than like 40 meters for most people. And I think the world record is somewhere in the 200 meter range. So let's just say that this is more than good enough. But I like that it's built to a robust level that, you know, aligns with the iconography of this particular design aesthetic. Now, getting into the bracelet here, guys, some of you might recognize this style from the Umara 6105. You know, kind of non-Willard watches that were released with also 8L movements, and it looks very similar. It's a very handsome bracelet. I dig it. I think the proportions are much better than the original Marinemaster bracelet, which had overly long links, which were harder to adjust for and everything like that. So here you're getting a 20 millimeter lug width, drilled lugs at that. So if you did want to swap that out, you absolutely could. You're getting the pin and collar construction, and you're getting a signed fold over clasp. Some of you might be thinking, oh, it doesn't have the Marinemaster clasp. Well, it doesn't have the old Marinemaster 300 clasp. That clasp still does exist on certain Grand Seiko models as well as within the Prospex LX line of divers, but those are going to be exceedingly more expensive, guys. Here at this price point, I think it works. Honestly, most people aren't going to use a diver's extension, so having something that's put away and doesn't get in the way, I have no problem with that. And with the links, well, they're, you know, not as short as these links, right, which are basically all half links, so you only need like one other position to get in between those half links. Here you do have, you know, they're not overly long, but they are longer, so it is nice that Seiko did offer you, you know, 4 manual micro adjustment positions. So with all that said, let's actually get this piece on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, guys, yes, this is what I've been waiting for, a really wearable Marinemaster 300. And I mean, the Marinemaster 200s I've worn in the past, it still had this style, you know, in the SPB line, even the GMT models, very nice. And some of the limited 8L powered models that had only 200 meters of water resistance were absolutely gorgeous. And this is no different, guys. This is just a beautiful evolution of such an iconic case design. The dial, everything works for me here. Now, of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to get a fair amount of, you know, perspective distortion. It's going to make the watch seem a lot larger than it actually is. So all I do is keep my wrist nice and low and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can get still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And you guys can see on my 7.5-inch wrist, I think this just wears absolutely perfectly. It's a full-size diver, not oversized by any means, not undersized. This is definitely not, going to be mistaken for a mid-size watch, but I like that it still does have that kind of retro aesthetic, being vintage inspired, but still, with something that still feels quite hefty and definitely, gives you the feeling of quality. And my goodness, look at the transitions between brushed and polishing. Look at that undercut. Look at how beautifully thin this mid case wears, the organic lines, the flow down into the bracelet now, which is just beautifully done. Guys, did I mention that this also has a hard coating on it? Yes. So it does have a hard coating over that steel. So another thing that just helps with just maintaining the looks for micro scratches and against micro scratches and everything like that. And it holds up. I mean, I've had plenty of watches with Dia Shield. I don't think it's, by any means the hardest coating out there. But you know what? It works, and I haven't had any of them peel on me or anything like that. I mean, there's, of course, a couple of high friction points where you can get a little, where a hardened material will wear on a hardened material. But other than that, I mean, this does help these watches just continue to look really, really immaculate. And I'm a big fan, guys. And again, I've loved this design aesthetic for so long, and there's so many watches that I've loved, from afar, just even some I've owned just to collect, to own, but aren't watches that want to really jump onto my wrist. This is absolutely one of them. So I love that I was able to reconcile the love for this design language with also a desire to wear this. Like, I want to wear this watch, and it gets worn, and it's not something where, an unbalanced profile or anything, or a particular, weight that feels a little bit extreme or off balanced or eccentric. I like that this feels less eccentric, but it feels no less bold. So with that said, let's actually get this off the wrist, set up for some Lume shots, low light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. All right, and like you'd expect, that Lume Bright is glowing intensely. So beautifully applied, beautifully thick, and it's some of the best compound in the market today. And again, another nice thing is that it's in-house. I mean, down to the lubrication, the crystals, the jewels, the hairspray. You can't get any more in-house than Seiko when it comes to that. But one thing I like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because I was going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming in and out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice with these colors, textures, and finishes run alike in less than optimal lighting. And you guys can see how uniform the light is gliding off of the brushing on the case and the bracelet. The deep luster of that polishing there, those beautifully thick bevels, my goodness. And then that dial with that very nice granular texturing, which does catch the light in a really nice way, and it's playing with it in the same way that the dual finish on the handset is playing with the light, maintaining contrast, right? And I dig that. And you can see there, you're even getting a little bit of play and texture across that sloped, chapter ring on the outer section. So this one hits a lot of marks for me, guys. I'm digging it. And there's always going to be trade-offs. No watch is perfect. And honestly, if you had a bunch of watches with all the same clasp, the same water resistance, the same design language, I mean, it'd probably be a pretty boring collection. So I think, eventually you come to accept, at least that's where I'm at in my journey, I accept the quirks, and I like the things that make this watch in particular different than other watches, including other Seiko watches. So for me, this is something where I enjoy this watch because of its feature set and because of its attributes. And it's not something to where it's just like, oh, well, bullet points on paper make this my perfect watch. No, there's an emotional connection that this really emotes, and I have to say that this is the best Marinemaster yet. Like, period. Like, for me, again, it goes back to the original 6159 saturation diver, high beat movement, gilt setup. Like, I love that. And then there's this, and then there's everything else, and that's it. There's more expensive watches, guys. My own personal SLA039 that I'm trading out now because of this piece is a better watch, from pretty much every measurable metric. It's also a lot more expensive, but I like this better because I want to wear this, and it still gives me the look that I'm looking for, but gives me the wear experience that I actually enjoy. So, for me, guys, let's get into some closing thoughts. Now, on the wrist, super wearable, and again, this is not something that, up until very recently was not really something you would associate with the Marinemaster 300 moniker, was wearability, right? So super wearable. It screams quality to a Grand Seiko-like level. And I owned some Grand Seikos, modern and neo-vintage, and they are gorgeous and they're immaculate. They're not by any means entry-level, cheaper Grand Seikos. Like, they have all the works in terms of complications done, down to the complex handsets, textured dials, crazy micro beveling and micro texturing on the indices, everything, right? Full stop. This isn't as good as that, but it reminds me of it, and I'm cool with that, and I like that. And in terms of model variations, this is also available in a white dial SLA077 colorway, which I think looks gorgeous. But for me, the classic black is the way I want it to go. I think maybe if they integrated the date a little bit better here, the black on black works. But on that other dial, it's more of an opaline silver and then like kind of a white, matte white disc. So for me, it just stands out a little bit more than I would like. Still a beautiful watch, and if somebody gave me one for free, I'd absolutely enjoy it, love it, and wear it. But if I had to choose between the two, this is the one that I have personally chose. In terms of comparable models, guys, this line sits above the $1,500 6R powered SPB 383 and below the $6,500 spring drive powered Prospex LX SNR029. And I think that's cool. Like, it works in terms of the things that make it better than the SPB, but the things that make it cheaper than an SNR. Like, I'm cool with that trade-off. And even within the trade-off in terms of wearability, this for me is the sweet spot. And I think personally, in terms of outside of Seiko's line and positioning, I think this is really well spec'd to compete against Sellita powered, guys. Sellita powered, right? Not even chronometer grade, but actually just a bog stock Sellita. $2,700 Swiss divers from Oris. And I love Oris, right? I own an Aquis. And, within the Aquis line or their new Divers date line, which is really just the Diver 65 kind of update and evolution, those go for $2,700. And those have standard Sellita movements in them, guys. Not chronometer grade, but they are Swiss made. But again, that's an off the shelf movement. This is all fully in house, and it is historically significant. So as much as I love Oris, I mean, this, in terms of the value proposition for me, I mean, it's not a competition. This has a better value proposition. And I love those watches, and I wouldn't mind getting one of those new Oris diver dates they look really cool. It's not a watch I dislike, right? But this, for me, is a better, I mean, you can tell because I own it, right? I have it now. So that's what I chose to pursue, given the options in the field. Now, for me, guys, the bottom line, this is one of the finest Seiko divers on the market today. And although expensive, for a Seiko diver, because, most folks, they typically they liked the Marinemaster 300. They made Seiko mods to try to really employ the, to get that look at a more affordable price. But, not a lot of people have Marinemaster 300s of that ilk. They just have, they were just kind of relegated to Grail territory. So a lot of folks, they don't think about the pricing. And again, this is comparatively cheaper than the unbranded, right? It doesn't even have the Marinemaster text on it anymore. The 8L powered Marinemaster 300 SLA021 that still retails for $3,100. This is cheaper and better. Better for me anyway. I can't say that it's, you know, technically a better watch. It's a better watch for me in that space. So yeah, again, Seiko technically reduced the price of the classic Marinemaster 300 and is offering this. So it's more attainable, and also much more wearable and more versatile in pretty much every way. So, I dig that. So, you know, another thing just to kind of close with is historically the Marinemaster name is kind of the closest thing that Seiko's had to an instantly recognizable model line, like the Submariner for Rolex or the Seamaster from Omega. So I'm really happy to see Seiko owning that heritage and propositioning the Marinemaster brand name, you know, back in the spotlight now at an international level. So, you know, the Seiko Marinemaster, it's up there. And yeah, at the end of the day, the Seamaster and the Submariner, they're not the top spec. There are sea dwellers, right? There are Planet Oceans, Ultra Deeps. So yes, there are other watches within Seiko's catalog that dive deeper, that are more technically impressive. But this is kind of that sweet spot, right? And it's a premium sweet spot. It's where you're gonna, you know, a lot of what you pay for. I mean, considering how good micro brands are these days, and even factory brands. I mean, a lot of what you're paying for, apart from just those, you know, kind of flat spec sheet bullets, it's going to be the heritage. It's going to be the brand and the experience. And Seiko does offer you something very special when it comes to a lot of those, you know, less tangible, more subjective types of, you know, points of pride, right? When it comes to a historied brand and, you know, horological significance within the space, within just dive watches, not even thinking about all the other things Seiko has done within chronographs and you know, space exploration types of watches and everything like that, aviation, but even just on the in terms of divers. I mean, there's so many firsts, and I mean, the original was actually the first high beat saturation diver. That this watch is based off of that watch, right? So there's a lot of rich history there, and I love that, and I love that Seiko's saying, hey, let's take something and run with it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do next. I won't be offended if they decide to do another elevated Marinemaster watch that looks like a 6105. I'm gonna be happy to check that one out too, because I do think that you know, in the past, so much of what we think of in terms of the iconography for Seiko have been dictated by fan names, right? The turtle, you know, even calling the SKX the SKX. There's so many other models that weren't the SKX 007 or 009 that were still, that had the SKX, not even the original monster, right? Names like Sumo, so Shogun, Samurai, right? These are all just kind of fan, you know, names. And here, this is the Seiko Marinemaster, and they own that, and they really show that here. Another huge shout out to Belmont Watches, guys. Again, can't recommend them enough. I've had nothing but good experiences. But let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.